The Yupik, Yupiaq and Yupiit, Yupiat, also Central Alaskan Yup'ik, Central Yupik, Alaskan Yup'ik, are an Eskimo people of western and southwestern Alaska, ranging from southern Norton Sound southwards along the coast of the Bering Sea on the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta and along the northern coast of Bristol Bay as far east as Nushagak Bay and the northern Alaska Peninsula at Naknek River and Egegik Bay, also known as Cup'ik for the Chevak Cup'ik dialect-speaking Eskimos of Chevak and Cup'ig for the Nunivak Cup'ig dialect-speaking Eskimos of Nunivak Island. Both Chevak Cup'ik and Nunivak Cup'ig Eskimos are also known as Cup'ik. The Yupik, Cup'ik, and Cup'ig speakers can converse without difficulty, and the regional population is often described using the larger designation of Yupik. They are one of the four Yupik peoples of Alaska and Siberia, closely related to the Sugpiaq Alutiiq of south-central Alaska, the Siberian Yupik of St. Lawrence Island and Russian Far East, and the Naukan of Russian Far East. The Yupiat speak the Yupik language. Of the total population of about 21,000 people, about 10,000 are speakers of the language. Yupik Eskimos combine a contemporary and a traditional subsistence lifestyle in a blend unique to the Southwest Alaska. Today, Yupiks work and live in Western style but still hunt and fish in traditional subsistence ways and gather traditional foods. Most Yupik people still speak the native language and bilingual education has been in force since the 1970s. Yupiat are the most numerous of the various Alaska native groups and speak the Central Alaskan Yup'ik language, a member of the Eskimo Aleutian family of languages. As of the 2000 U.S. Census, the Yupiat population in the United States numbered over 24,000, of whom over 22,000 lived in Alaska. The vast majority in the 70 of the communities in the traditional Yup'ik territory of western and southwestern Alaska. As of the 2010 U.S. Census, the largest Alaska Native tribal grouping, either alone or in combination, was Yup'ik, followed by Yupiat. Yup'ik also had the greatest number of people who identified with one tribal grouping and no other race. The neighbors of the Yup'ik Eskimos are the Yupiaq Eskimos to north, Aleutiiq Alutiiq to the Sugpiaq Eskimos to south, and Alaskan Athabascans, such as Yupikized Holy-Kachuk and Dagutan, non-Yupikized Koyukon and Dina to east. Yup'ik culture: we dance and tell stories about the past and tell our children to pass on the story. The traditional Yup'ik Eskimo village of Toksook Bay is located on Nelson Island, 6.5 miles southeast of Nunivak in the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. The village was established in 1964 when a number of younger couples from Nightmute moved to the new location at Toksook Bay to be more accessible to the annual freighter ship, the North Star. Families from Nunivak and Yupiaq joined them and the settlement grew. The city was incorporated in 1972. As of 2011, the Alaska Department of Labor estimated its population at 598. A federally recognized tribe is located in the community, the Nunivak tribe. Commercial fishing and subsistence activities supplement income and provide essential food sources. Herring roe, salmon and halibut are favorite harvests. Naming: originally the form Yup'ik was used in the northern area while the form Yupiaq was used in the southern area, while certain places had other forms, but the form Yup'ik is now used as a common term. Yup'ik comes from the Yup'ik word yuk meaning person, plus the postbase piq meaning real or genuine. Thus, Yup'ik literally means real people. The ethnographic literature sometimes refers to the Yupik people of the language as Yuk'ik. In the Hooper Bay Chevak and Nunivak dialects of Yupik, both the language and the people are given the name Cup'ik. The use of an apostrophe in the name Yupik compared to Siberian Yupik exemplifies the Central Yupik's orthography, where the apostrophe represents gemination of the P sound. The names given to them by the neighbors Alutiiq tilde Sugpiaq, Pamanimirak Parmanimiak, Dagshinag Athabaskan Novo Exitian, Holikachak Athabaskan Namahitan, Ko Yukon Athabaskan, Nobagahatamkar, Dina Ina Athabaskan, Dudna Upper Kuskokwim Athabaskan, Dodina Sg.Iu Place. History. Origins. The common ancestors of Eskimos and Aleut are believed by archaeologists to have their origin in eastern Siberia, arriving in the Bering Sea area about 10,000 years ago. Research on blood types suggests that the ancestors of American Indians reached North America before the ancestors of the Eskimos and Aleut, and that there were several waves of migration from Siberia to the Americas by way of the Bering Land Bridge, which became exposed between 20,000 and 8,000 years ago during periods of glaciation. By about 3,000 years ago, the progenitors of the Yupiat had settled along the coastal areas of what would become western Alaska, with migrations up the coastal rivers, notably the Yukon and Kuskokwim, around 1400 CE, eventually reaching as far upriver as Baymiat on the Yukon and Crow Village on the Kuskokwim. Russian period. The Russian colonization of the Americas by the Russian Empire covers the period from 1732 to 1867. As the runs from Siberia to America became longer expeditions, the Crows established hunting and trading posts of the Shelikof-Gilikov Company. Approximately half of the fur traders were Russians, such as Przemysleniki from various European parts of the Russian Empire or from Siberia. Grigory Shelikov led aggressions on Kodiak Island against the indigenous Alutiiqs in 1784, known as the Awa massacre, where Russian employees killed over 2,000 people according to some estimates. In consequence of the massacre, the island became fully controlled by the company. By the late 1790s, these had become permanent settlements of the Russian America. Until about 1819, Russian settlement and activity was largely confined to the Aleutian Islands, the Pribilov Islands, Kodiak Island, and to scattered coastal locations on the mainland. The Russian period, lasting roughly 120 years, can in turn be divided into three 40-year periods: 1745 to 1785, 1785 to 1825, and 1825 to 1865. The first phase of the Russian period affected only the Aleutian Alutiiqs profoundly. It was also during this period that large sectors of the Bering Sea coast were mapped, but by the English explorer James Cook, rather than by the Russians. In 1778, Cook discovered and named Bristol Bay and then sailed northward around Cape Newnham into Kuskokwim Bay. During the second phase of the Russian period, the Shelikof-Gilikov Company and later the Russian-American Company was organized and continued in the exploration of the lucrative North Pacific Ocean sea otter trade. During this time, the treatment of the native people improved from outright atrocity and massacre to mere enslavement and exploitation. The major portion of Alaska remained little known, and the Yupik Eskimos of the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta were still not severely affected. The Russo-American Treaty of 1824 was signed in St. Petersburg between representatives of Russian Empire and the United States on April 17, 1824, and went into effect on January 12, 1825. During the last phase of the Russian period, the effects of introduced disease, the consequences of early exploration, the effects on the native population of the establishment of permanent Russian trading posts, and the impact of the early Russian Orthodox missionaries. The Treaty of St. Petersburg of 1825 defined the boundaries between Russian America and British Empire claims and possessions in the Pacific Northwest American period. The United States purchased Alaska from the Russian Empire on March 30, 1867. Originally organized as the Department of Alaska, the area was renamed the District of Alaska and the Territory of Alaska before becoming the modern state of Alaska upon being admitted to the Union as a state in 1959. The early American period is the period of neglect and exploitation of natural resources in the years following the purchase of Alaska. Moravian Protestant and Jesuit Catholic missions and schools were established along the Kuskokwim and Lower Yukon rivers, respectively. Kashtchum disappeared due to missionary coercion. During the early American period, native languages were forbidden in the schools, only English was permitted. The Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act was signed into law on December 18, 1971. The ANCSA is central to both Alaska's history and current Alaska Native economies and political structures. Historiography before European contact. The history of the Yupik, like other Alaska natives, was all oral history. Each society or village had storytellers who were known for their memories, and those were the people who told the young about the group's history. The stories are crucial parts of Alaska's earliest history. The historiography of the Yupik ethno-history, as a part of Eskimology, is slowly emerging. The first academic studies of Yupik Eskimos tended to generalize all Eskimo cultures as homogeneous and changeless, while the personal experiences of non-natives who visited the Eskimos formed the basis of early research. By the mid-20th century, archaeological excavations in southwestern Alaska allowed scholars to consider the effects of foreign trade goods on 19th century Eskimo material culture. Also, translations of pertinent journals and documents from Russian explorers and the Russian-American Company added breadth to the primary source base. First ethnographic information about the Yupik of the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta recorded by the Russian explorer Lieutenant Lavrentiy Zagoskin during his travels explorations for the Russian-American Company in 1842 to 1844. Due to the dearth of documentary evidence available, and a general lack of interest in the region, the first cultural studies of southwestern Alaska Eskimos developed only in the late 1940s. American anthropologist Margaret Lantis published The Social Culture of the Nunivak Eskimo in 1946. It was the first complete description of any Alaskan indigenous group. She begins the 1947 book, Alaskan Eskimo Ceremonialism, a broad study of Alaskan Eskimos. American cultural anthropologist James W. Vanston and Wendell H. Oswald were among the earliest scholars to undertake significant archaeological research in the Yupik region. Vanston demonstrates the ethnographic approach to cultural history in Eskimos of the Nushagak River, an ethnographic history published in 1967. Wendell Oswald published a comprehensive ethnographic history of the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta region, the longest and most detailed work on Yupik history to date in Bashful No Longer, An Alaskan Eskimo Ethno-History, 1778 to 1988, published in 1988. Anne Fina appeared and began writing extensively about the Yukon-Kuskokwim Eskimos in the 1980s and melded Yupik voices with traditional anthropology and history in an unprecedented fashion. The historiography of Western Alaska is that only a few number of Yupik scholars have contributed to their own history. Harold Napoleon, who an elder of Hooper Bay, presents an interesting premise in his book Yupiaq, The Way of the Human Being, published in 1988. A more scholarly, yet similar, treatment of cultural change can be found in Angar Yupiaq A Yupiaq Worldview, A Pathway to Ecology and Spirit, published in 2001, which focuses on the intersection of Western and Yupik values. Yupiaq, a way of life, is Yupik way of life as a human being, including interactions with others, subsistence, a traditional knowledge, environmental, a traditional ecological knowledge, and understanding, indigenous psychology, and spiritual balance. Yupiaq defined the correct way of the thinking and speaking about all living things, especially the great sea and land mammals on which the Yupik relied for food, clothing, shelter, tools, kayaks, and other essentials. These great creatures were sensitive, they were able to understand human conversations, and they demanded and received respect. Yupiaq prescribed the correct method of hunting and fishing, and the correct way of handling all fish and game caught by the hunter in order to honor and appease the spirits and maintain a harmonious relationship with them. Although unwritten, this way can be compared to Mosaic law because it governed all aspects of a human being's life. Elders. An Alaska Native elder is adult respected elder. The elder is defined as an individual who has lived an extended life, currently maintains a healthy lifestyle, and has a wealth of cultural information and knowledge. The elder has expertise based upon know-how and provides consultation to the community and family when needed. Traditionally, knowledge was passed down from the elders to the youth through storytelling. A Norkakan is a lesson, a reminder for the younger generation to learn from the experience of the elders. The Tegnik, which is derived from the Yupik word teg, meaning to be hard, to be tough. Yupik discipline is different from Western discipline. The discipline and authority within Yupik child-rearing practices have at its core respect for the children. More recently, elders have been invited to attend and present at national conferences and workshops. Elders in Residence is a program that involves elders in teaching and curriculum development in a formal educational setting, and is intended to impact the content of courses and the way the material is taught. Society. Kinship. The Yupik kinship is based on what is formally known as an Eskimo kinship, a lineal kinship. This kinship system is bilateral and a basic social unit consisted of from 2 to 4 generations, including parents, offspring, and parents' parents. Kinship terminologies in the Yupik societies exhibit a human type of social organization with bilateral descent and Iroquois cousin terminology. Bilateral descent provides each individual with his or her own unique set of relatives, a kindred, which includes some consanguineal members from the father's kin group and some from the mother's, with all 4 grandparents affiliated equally to the individual. Parallel cousins are referenced by the same terms as siblings, and cross-cousins are differentiated. Marriages were arranged by parents. Yupik societies were shown to have a band organization characterized by extensive bilaterally structured kinship with multi-family groups, aggregating annually. Community. The Yupik created larger settlements in winter to take advantage of group subsistence activities. Villages were organized in certain ways, and cultural rules of kinship served to define relationships among the individuals of the group. Villages ranged in size from just 2 to more than a dozen sod houses for women and girls, 1 kashjik for men and boys, and warehouses. Leadership. Formally, social status was attained by successful hunters who could provide food and skins. Successful hunters soon were recognized as leaders in the social group by the members. Although there were no formally recognized leaders, informal leadership was practiced by or in the men who held the title Nukalpiaq. The Nukalpiaq, or good provider, was a man of considerable importance in village life. This man was consulted in any affair of importance affecting the village in general, particularly in determining participation in the Chevak and Nushagak ceremonies. He was said to be a major contributor in those ceremonies and provider to orphans and widows. The position of the Yupiaq was not, however, comparable to that of the Yupik of the northern and northwestern Alaska and Yupiaq Eskimos, who had the power to collect the surplus and much of the basic production of individual family members and later redistribute it. Residents traditionally, the Yupik lived in semi-permanent subterranean different houses for men and women in winter. The Yupik men lived together in a larger communal house, while women and children lived in a smaller different sod houses. Although the men and women lived separately, they had many interactions. Depending on the village, Kashjik and Ina were connected by a tunnel. Both Kashjik and Ina was also a school and workshop for young boys and girls. Among the Akumiat, the residential pattern of separate houses for women and children and a single residence for men and boys persisted until about 1930. Women's house, or Ina, is not communal, a semi-communal smaller sod house. This looked similar to Kashjim but were only about half the size. Women and children lived in houses that served as residences for 2 to 5 women and the children. Raising children was the women's responsibility until young boys left the home to join other males in the Kashjik to learn discipline and how to make a living. The Ina was also a school and workshop for young girls where they could learn the art and craft of skin sewing, food preparation, and so on. Men's house, a Kashjik, is communal larger sod house. The Kashjik, which was used and occupied from November through March. The Kashjik housed all adult males in the community and male youth about 7 years and older. Meals prepared by women in the houses were taken to the males in the Kashjik by young women and girls. The Kashjik was also a school and workshop for young boys where they could learn the art and craft of mask making, tool making, and kayak construction. It was also a place for learning hunting and fishing skills, and it was a bathhouse for men where hot fires and rocks produced heat which aided body cleansing. Thus, the Kashjik was a residence, bathhouse, and workshop for all but the youngest male community members. Although there were no formally recognized leaders or officers to be held, men and boys were assigned specific places within the Kashjik that distinguished rank of males by age and residence. The Kashjik was a ceremonial and spiritual center for the community. In primary villages, all ceremonies and gatherings took place in the Kashjik. During the early 20th century, Christian church services were held in the Kashjik before churches were constructed. Virtually all official business, within the group, between groups and villages, and between villages and non-Yupik, was conducted in the Kashjik. Yupik Eskimos did not live in igloos or snow houses, but snow houses were built for temporary shelter on winter hunting trips by northern and northwestern Alaskan and Yupiaq Eskimos. The word Iglu means house in Yupiaq. This word is the Inupiaq cognate of the Yupik word Galu. Regional groups. Among the Yupik of southwestern Alaska, societies, like those of the Inupiat of northwestern Alaska, were differentiated by territory, speech patterns, clothing details, annual cycles, and ceremonial life. Prior to and during the mid-19th century, the time of Russian exploration and presence in the area, the Yupiat were organized into at least 12, and perhaps as many as 20, territorially distinct regional or socio-territorial groups. These groups included Untitled inhabiting the Norton Sound area. The name derives from the Yupik word Untitled, denoting a Yupik from the Norton Sound area, especially the North Shore villages of Elam and Golovin and the South Shore villages of Untitled and St. Michael. Untitled were speakers of the Norton Sound Untitled subdialect of Yupik. Paschalurmiut inhabiting the mouth of Yukon River. The name derives from Paschali, the name of an abandoned village of southern Norton Sound near the present-day village of Kotlik at one of the mouths of the Yukon River. The village name comes from the root paste meaning to become set in a position. Paschalurmiut were speakers of the Norton Sound Kotlik subdialect of Yupik, and are also called Pasauriite, denoting the use of this subdialect in which s is used in many words where other speakers of Yupik use y. Quigpagmiut inhabiting the lower Yukon River. The name derives from Quigpak, meaning big river, the Yupik name for the Yukon River. Mariyamiut inhabiting the Scamin Bay area. The name derives from Mariyak, the Yupik name for Scamin Bay, which in turn derives from Marik, meaning marshy, muddy lowland. Maramiut, deriving from the same word, denotes flat land dwellers in general living between the mouth of the Yukon and Nelson Island. Askanamiut inhabiting the area of the present-day villages of Hooper Bay and Chevak. Askanamiut is an old name for the village of Hooper Bay. Kalulyamiut inhabiting Nelson Island. The name derives from Kalulyak, the Yupik name for Nelson Island, which derives in turn from Qalu, meaning dipnet. In the Kaluirak, there are 3 villages. Those villages are Toksuk Bay, Nightmute, and Tunanak. Akulmiut inhabiting the tundra or big lake area north of the Kuskokwim River. The name denotes people living on the tundra as opposed to those living along the coastline of major rivers, such as in the present-day villages of Nunivak, Kasigluk, or Atmautluik. The name derives from Akula meaning midsection area between or tundra. Kainarmiut inhabiting the lower Bering Sea coast on either side of Kuskokwim Bay, including the area north of the bay where the modern-day villages of Shvornak, Kipnak, Kongiganak, Quigalingik are located, and south of the bay where the villages of Enik and Quinagag are located. The name derives from Kaininik, meaning lower coast, which derives in turn from the root Kani area beside. Nunivamiut inhabiting Nunivak Island. The name derives from Nunivak, the name for the island in the general central dialect of Yupik. In the Nunivak dialect of Yupik, the island's name is Nuniwar and the people are called Nuniwamiut. Kuskokwagmiut inhabiting the lower and middle Kuskokwim River. The name derives from Kuskokwak, the Yupik name for the Kuskokwim River, possibly meaning a big thing with a small flow. The Kuskokwagmiut can be further divided into 2 groups. Unukumiut inhabiting the lower Kuskokwim below Bethel to its mouth in Kuskokwim Bay. The word derives from Unukit, meaning those downriver, hence downriver people. Kiartigmiut inhabiting inland regions in the upper drainages of the Kuskokwim, Nushagak Wood, and Kvichak River drainages. The word derives probably from Kaani, meaning inside or upriver, hence upriver people. The Kiartigmiut lived inland along the Kuskokwim River drainage from the present location of Bethel to present-day Crow Village and the vicinity of the 19th-century Russian outpost Kolmakovsky Redoubt. By the mid-19th century, many Kiartigmiut had migrated to the drainage of the Nushagak River. Tuyuryamiut inhabiting the Togiak River area. The word derives from Tuyuryak, the Yupik name for the village of Togiak. Agglurmiut inhabiting the Bristol Bay area along the lower Nushagak River and northern Alaska Peninsula. The word derives from Igluk, meaning ridgepole or center beam of a structure. While Yupiat were nomadic, the abundant fish and game of the Yupiaq Delta and Bering Sea coastal areas permitted for a more settled life than for many of the more northerly and Yupiaq people. Under normal conditions, there was little need for interregional travel, as each regional group had access to enough resources within its own territory to be completely self-sufficient. However, fluctuations in animal populations or weather conditions sometimes necessitated travel and trade between regions.